Hi, welcome to Two Doulas and a Midwife. We're back here on our fourth podcast. Very exciting. Last week we spoke about that first trimester, and now we're going to go delve a little bit deeper into the emotions of finding out you're pregnant, that first trimester, all those emotions surrounding that. And so I'm joined today with Danielle and Sharon, my other doula and midwife. And I'll hand over to them to just introduce themselves, and then we can jump right in.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's wonderful to be back with both of you ladies again. I'm very excited to talk about today's topic. We did say we were going to chat about the second trimester, but we spoke a lot about all the physical symptoms and things that one would need to do in their pregnancy to get through that first trimester, all the supplements and scans and symptoms and all of those things. So we felt this was a good opportunity to talk about the emotional side, the mental, the ups and downs that moms and families go through during that first trimester. So, and handing over to our lovely midwife, Sharon.
Hello. I'm very glad to be here also. It's lovely to chat about that which we are most passionate about. Ideas just start rolling right from the beginning of the topic. And so I think, let's get going.
Absolutely. So, Sharon, there are a few things that come to mind because delving into the emotional side, there's also what we didn't quite cover last week, and I feel we need to, because it also is part of an emotional roller coaster, is the blood tests that need to be taken, in that first trimester. And so can you just perhaps tell us what blood tests are necessary, and what are there necessary ones and not necessary ones that are taken? As a midwife, what would you suggest, and what does a gynecologist want to do, and how does that impact? We can go onto the emotions. How does that impact a person emotionally when they need to be told, what blood test to be taken and what the results could be?
Sure, that is a very big question. And of course, it depends on how you run your life. If you are living your best life and you have a healthy diet, then you tend to be aware that you're possibly not anemic. Your mum, again, would have been bringing you up to identify for you, you're looking very pale, perhaps you need to find out what's going on. Maybe you need supplements. All of that kind of living, whether you grow vegetables and live out of your garden, or whether you just take synthetic supplements, all of that has a bearing on your general well-being. Whether or not you've been to your gynecologist before planning a pregnancy to see what is the state of your hormones, whether you've seen your homeopath to check the state of your hormones, all of these things have a bearing on what needs to be done next. Those people who perhaps have not planned a pregnancy and suddenly discover out of the blue, have no idea how they run their bodies, and then discover that they are pregnant. And if they're seeing their obstetrician or their gynecologist first, then it could be that they need to have their progesterone levels checked. And doctors normally, very often, routinely do those things. We as midwives don't tend to look at those things first. We want to know what blood group the mum is, because if she is a rhesus negative blood group, then she has more challenges ahead of her necessarily. Not necessarily high risk, but just that we want to keep a closer eye on her to see that there is no antibodies being produced against the possibility that the baby has a rhesus positive blood group. We want to know if she's immune to rubella. We want to know if she is harboring any sexually transmitted diseases, whether or not she has hepatitis, because that can be transferred to the baby during the birthing process. So we would normally send her for a routine antenatal blood check, and whether or not, excuse me, she has HIV included in that. I find that most people know their HIV status because they have insurance and other reasons for checking your HIV status. But those women who don't know their HIV status, it's a wonderful opportunity, I think, to find your own foundation of health being pregnant. You know, it reveals things for you that nothing else does. And particularly as a young person, you know, if you're young and you're not pregnant, then we never check up on you. But when you are young and you're pregnant, it's a wonderful opportunity. And I hope that women see that as a wonderful opportunity to see, how do I run my body on a day-to-day basis. Oh, sorry.
Mm.
Oh.
And as we spoke about in our first podcast, about preparing your body to be pregnant, that one should actually, it's not just about, stopping the contraception and giving it a go, that you do go for a checkup, so that you do optimize yourself to house a human being. And I think that makes a huge difference to one, in terms of the emotions of finding out you're pregnant. If it's something that you've been planning and you had gone to the doctors, you do know that your iron levels are good, and you may have cut out wheat or whatever it is, and then you find out you're pregnant, and that wonderful surge of emotions. But then, as Sharon was saying, this when pregnancy kind of happens upon you and you don't know how your body is holding in terms of your general health and well-being, I think it makes a huge impact on the mom. And I read such an interesting book called Why Love Matters, about the different emotional state of the mom and the baby, from small, just minute details of whether that pregnancy was planned and wanted, as opposed to a pregnancy that was perhaps a surprise but not unwanted, and then a pregnancy that was a complete surprise and unwanted. And all of these things affect us as women and families, especially if there is a partner who may or may not have expected this little surprise. So Sharon, I think what you're saying is, it is an excellent time to kind of reset and see where our bodies are holding in terms of our general health and well-being, so that we can look after these little bundles physically and emotionally.
If somebody had to find out they were pregnant and it was a huge surprise and perhaps even unwanted, what would the steps be? What would you recommend a woman does in this state? Because, if somebody wanted to abort, how does one go about that? Or do we ask them to go for counseling first? What is your suggestion on that? If somebody came to you and said, look, I really have battled with this surprise and I want to know what my options are, how would you guide them and assist them, Sharon?
Well, there are so many walks of life, particularly in South Africa, that I think that it's very important, first of all, for all women to know that abortion in South Africa is legal, that they're not doing anything illegal. And so it's very important, first of all, that they know that they can have support in whatever way they need it. That women in general have to know that there are so many avenues they can go to. Those people who need to go to the church, those people who need to go to their spiritual leader, those people who need to go to the nurse at school, those people who need to go to a well woman clinic, first need to know that there need to be no external judgment. It's a very difficult thing for a woman to judge herself, of course, but it is very important that she know that she can have help, because still in South Africa there are women who don't know that. And in days gone by, when I was training, there were horrific incidences of women trying to abort a baby themselves, and disasters happening on so many levels. An abortion is never an easy thing for a woman to determine. And as long as she knows she can find support, not necessarily in her family, but amongst other women, and that she can have help, and that her health doesn't have to be put at risk because of a situation that she may find herself in. And these dreadful means that women sometimes turn to, and I'm not going to mention any of them, don't have to be explored, that she can be in safe hands, that she can have whatever outcome she needs to determine have happen in a safe way, so that she may start again, and have a different option.
Personally,
For sure.
had to terminate a pregnancy 17 years ago. My baby was diagnosed with a terminal neural tube defect called anencephaly. And that condition was incompatible with life. And we were advised by the rabbis in our community to terminate the pregnancy. And as a result from that experience, I went on to become a bereavement doula as well, so that I could give support to women that were having similar situations. And so someone like me could be, a very good support for someone who is even in that decision-making process of terminating pregnancy. And, so I give support to women having early miscarriage. I've attended stillbirths, and I've counseled women who've had to terminate pregnancies for medical reasons. So there are people out there who can give these women support, and as Sharon said, it is so important that they know that they don't have to go through these backdoor, they can go to, a proper care provider and have their procedures done safely. And then there is that support. They just need to look for it, and there is that support out there for these women.
Oh, that's beautiful. On the flip side as well, that we've got women who found out they're pregnant and they absolutely do not want to terminate. They are determined to keep the baby, but they need that support as well because it's a huge life-changing decision. So, where would they go for that, Sharon? Could they go straight to them to a midwife they've chosen and see it through there? And would you support them emotionally in making this decision?
That's such a fabulous question because, in the world that we're living in, there are so many women who decide that their biological clock is ticking. They don't necessarily have a man in their life, but they're desperate to have a baby. And so sometimes they have in vitro fertilization in order to have this child. And they are prepared to take the whole responsibility on themselves.
Mm.
And what an interesting world we live in, because they have to save up enormously, first of all, to consider how are they going to manage their maternity leave, their care of themselves. What if there are challenges, physical challenges in the pregnancy? What if there are complications? What if the baby ends up in the special care unit? What if she has a premature birth? So many factors. What about the school fees? How is she going to take all of this on herself? Where is her help going to come from? And really, in an ideal world, she would want to mind map that first of all to see where is her help going to come from. Will her mum be a support? Her sisters be a support? I've had many of these mums who have planned a pregnancy single-handedly and have been very successful through raising their children themselves. Maybe they find a partner in the future. Maybe they have the community or the village raising the child. They would need to look at who are the male role models for the child, not only for a male child, obviously, but for a female child needing the male part of the family component. Is it going to be the grandfather? Will it be uncles, friends? And so for her to explore all aspects, as we would in any kind of ideal world, planning any kind of pregnancy, look at all of those aspects.
Absolutely. And would they be able to go to their doctor and just get support from there as well? Or would you suggest that they find a female to see them through this?
Well, of course, it depends on what country you're living in. If you were in Europe, you wouldn't be seeing a doctor at all. You would be seeing your midwife, and she would direct you to the support groups that you might need. And again, if we look at community and all the types of support groups that we have, it's not just the religious, but it's also the community, family, education support groups. If you're looking at a child perhaps with special needs, and what sort of support groups would you have from an education point of view and a creche point of view? If you're having to go back to work, then where is your support coming from then? Who's going to be looking after your child during the day? And what sort of hours would you be working, and can you work from home? And one of the wonderful things that COVID taught us was how to work from home, and how we don't really need to be in an office environment per se necessarily. And so, yeah, that's the upside of COVID. So looking at all her options, what about extra financial support? Where can she get that from? Can she multitask perhaps at home and at work, and still not be exhausted?
I think also,
Big one.
especially for our single moms, I think, to have someone like a doula going through the journey with you, especially if if you don't have access to a wonderful caring midwife like Sharon, that your doula can then take on that role as birth partner. She may not necessarily fulfill those needs and roles that a male partner would play. But just to know that, for that woman to know that she has that person that she can phone and say, I am just having a bad day, or to call the doula and say, I'm having these pains in my back. Is this normal? Just, that extra bit of support that, perhaps she couldn't necessarily get from her family or her friends. So,
Absolutely, I love that. I think doulas play an incredible role in pregnancy and birth. And, well, personally, I love being a doula. I love being there for all those questions and being there to hold the hands. But now we have, so we found out we're pregnant, not sure what I'm going to do about this. I have a boyfriend, but he's not being very supportive, blah, blah, blah. So I think we definitely need to encourage women to find their tribe, whether it's a doula, midwife, friends, whatever, to support them through it. And I think generally, as that pregnancy grows, so you do, and those what we call maternal instincts definitely kick in, and you start nurturing your pregnancy, you start nurturing the baby, you start taking responsibility. And, you can ask any mother, once that baby's here, you fall into that role and that's it. So it's all very well telling women that they're going to, you'll be fine, baby's going to arrive and you're going to know exactly what to do and everything. But I think the most important thing is finding your tribe, finding that person that's going to support you, speaking to your mother.
But I think
huge thing.
Even before that, again, in this ideal world that we don't live in, if you consider physically, your body prepares every month for clearing out the uterus and relining it. And if you see that as velvet, the body lays down this velvet lining in order for this fertilized egg to land in and to be nurtured by your body. Of course, in the ideal world, you're looking at how are you going to nurture that physically, first of all. What is the blood source going to be? What is the blood going to be carrying? Is it going to carry all the vitamins and minerals in order to make that the healthiest child? But emotionally, in an ideal world, we would be bringing in that soul from a welcoming perspective of both parties, both parents coming together to fuse in order to ignite that soul's journey within the body. And so, unfortunately, we don't talk to our children enough about selecting that person. When you are getting married or tying the knot or walking the log or whatever you want to call that commitment to somebody, we have all sorts of pre-nuptial courses that you can go on, but we don't talk enough over the dinner table about selecting one's partner. And so many girls are making babies with somebody that they wouldn't necessarily want to have a lifelong relationship with. And so wouldn't it be nice in this perfect world that we don't live in to talk to our girls, not to judge them, because when a mother says, oh, I don't like that boy, and then of course she's going to get her grip on him harder and
Yes.
judgment and all of those sort of aspects of choosing your partner. And they're told such rubbish at school, like you can't get pregnant the first time, and you can't get pregnant if you're standing up, and all the fallacies that we've looked at before. And really to bring up our children deeply with thought and respect as to perhaps we shouldn't be following the social media we see on movies all the time. I mean, you're having coffee with somebody and the next minute you're ripping your clothes off and you know, you're in bed. And we give people the idea that that's normal, that you don't have to have that moment of first holding hands. What about that moment where you held somebody's hand for weeks and weeks before you went to the next level? You know, how do we bring our children back to just slow it all down and give it some thought first so that we can move towards that perfect world of let's invite a third person into this relationship and see how that is going to affect each one of us as the grown-ups, and and see that again the medical model of welcoming a child in is just about the birth. We never think about the long-term aspect of excuse me, of the sleepless nights and the, you know, we did this yesterday. I mean, I have dads who make that statement of, you know, oh, I'm so tired, and you know, I was up last night, you want me to be up again tonight? Well, yes. So what is life going to be like with a small person in the house? And how do I manage sleepless nights? And how do I manage a sick child? And are we just going to be the perfect family? Or are we also going to look at what if this child's personality is the one that I least get on with in my family? What if that is my journey in life? How do I change that relationship from the giving perspective from what it was on the receiving perspective? You know, I received that relationship like this and it didn't work. How would I give to that relationship from the parental point of view and make it work? Do we have children? What if we were to explore in school, like life orientation? What if we were to look at not just don't have sex, but sex can lead to children, and children lead to permanent change in our lives?
Sorry.
And whether that is the decision to terminate the pregnancy, that is still a permanent change to a woman's life. She is never going to be the same again. And if she decides to receive this child happily, then what about the person that she is with? Are we both looking at, you know, is life orientation at school about preparing boys to be men, to be fathers, as well as preparing girls to be women, to be mothers? What does it mean to be a mother? What about those women who need to go back to work in order to be sane and to have somebody else raise their children? And those women who want to stay at home to raise their children and are not able to go back to work? What about all those implications to everybody in that group?
Absolutely, Sharon. So well put. It's really, you know, even people in a very healthy, stable relationship, bringing a child into the world is huge. You know, I always tell my moms, you know, whenever they complain about their aches and pains and the nausea, you know, I remind them you are building an entire human, and and one person is like a whole world, and there's so much potential attached to that little person. And it's not just about like I always say, I could have 12 babies because I love the nappy changing and the breastfeeding and, you know, and the cooing and the gooing and But, that little baby eventually grows up to become a person, and, and are we ready to take that on, that little person and their different needs? They may have completely.
But are you ever actually complete? Because you never you can talk about it. We can talk about, okay, I'm going to be a mother and it's going to be sleepless nights and everything. But are we ever really prepared? No.
When I'm financially stable, then we'll have a baby.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
does that ever happen?
No. And the
No.
universe is going to laugh at us then and say, well, you see, here's infertility. What are you going to do now? You have to wait. Let me wait until I've got the mortgage sorted. Let me wait until I've got the perfect man. Let me wait until, if you're going to be that person, then it's not going to happen, is it? That's
But that's what I'm
why life is so rich, because we don't have control, because we
yes.
do have to think on our feet. And that's what makes it exciting, isn't it?
So that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. So we can prepare. Absolutely. We can say, okay, I've got X amount in the bank, or I've got the house now. I can welcome a baby and I can do this and everything. And then sometimes I don't have the house. I'm still living with mom and dad, and whoops, I'm pregnant. So there are very, very many aspects to welcoming this little soul in. And sometimes those little souls just want to come in no matter what the circumstance. And so what are the basic, if you had to think of just like 3 basic preparation needs that you can do. So you find out you're pregnant, and boom, I think it's find your tribe, find out more about your pregnancy, what's going to happen during the pregnancy, and prepare yourself by reading, about being knowledgeable about what it takes to be pregnant, give birth, and then to look after a baby. I think knowledge is power. And so I think the message that we need to send out is really just empower yourself with knowledge. Go and find things, go and join groups, go and, find your tribe, find the people that are going to support you. And definitely find out what it takes to raise a child, whether it's on your own, whether it's with a partner, whether it's still living at home with mom and dad. What are your basic needs going to be, and how can I move forward with this? Then on the other
But
side, we've got...
it comes back to, though, sorry to interrupt you, it
No,
comes
no
back
problem.
to mothers talking to their children, first of all,
Yes.
not laying down the fear and the negativity around, oh, you were a mistake, and, I should never have had you, and, my life would have been so much better, blah, blah, blah. But to inform children that if you're going to participate in the sexual act, it could result in a pregnancy. And are you thinking about that before you, whatever you're going to do? So if we had a safe place for our children to come to be able to talk about anything, wouldn't that be nice? Here am
In the
I, your
imperfect
harbor.
world.
Yes, come and talk to me about what's happening in your world, so that we can really prepare families, because the family is the ultimate tribe, isn't it? Do we have to look
Absolutely.
for our tribe outside the family? Or what about all of those family components? Because, of course, we have to prepare the siblings also for any child that's coming on. It's not just the first child that disrupts our lives or changes us forever. It's child number 6, child number 7. What about those people and all the siblings? And everybody has to grow up so much faster because, the parents are bringing somebody else into our world. What about the grandparents? What about them having the opportunity to expand their minds and to consider, I was this kind of parent. What sort of grandparent am I going to be? Do I want to make all the same mistakes with my grandchildren that I made with my children? Or what a wonderful opportunity. And why is it so often that parents don't recognize recognize their parents when they are grandparents, because these strict and crazy parents that they were are now these lunatics of, oh, what a wonderful fire my grandchild is building. Look at his skill. And isn't this wonderful how he can burn things down, and, how he can engineer such incredible ideas. So, what about having family meetings about our ideas and our plans for the future, especially if that grandmother is going to have to perhaps give up her work in order to raise her grandchildren, or to be a major role, a major part in her daughter's life because her daughter has decided to raise a child alone? Does she first of all talk to her mother about how that might impact her life?
It's a very big question. It's a very big thing, that, because, every generation is completely different. And so what your parents or our parents prepared us for, and our kids aren't even living in that world anymore. The world has evolved so much that, so the grandparents giving advice, they doing it from what they were doing for their children, not their grandchildren, because the grandchildren are growing up very differently. I see it with my mother, that my son's on the computer or he's playing games or whatever. And I can see her get a little bit anxious because he's not running outside all the time, which he does. But, there's that, it's a very different world. And so we do actually have to have those meetings, have those get-togethers to say, look, this is how the world is now, and this is how the kids are now.
Yes.
And so
we see it though all the time, because even if you look at the African community, and you can see how not very long ago women would have their children and leave them with the granny to raise them, and then the mother expects to raise her grandchildren when it's her time to be the granny. And now the world has changed so abruptly that she doesn't get that opportunity, that now the mother is raising the children, and that previous mother doesn't get to raise her children or her grandchildren. And so we've got this generation
generational
of
gap.
Yes. What about that?
I mean, we're just talking in circles now and talking about all the negatives, but there are so many positives in having a baby, and an unplanned baby. It can change your world. It's just a blessing and a joy. And life goes on, and everything will settle down, and you will adapt, and you will find your groove with this baby, with this pregnancy. You will find that groove. There may be hard days, but most of them will be good days. But then we've got the flip side.
Made about read. Where do people go to read? Unfortunately, people go to the blooming Google machine and read some chat room thing and get their opinions, but they don't read books anymore. If you look behind me, those are the books that women used to read when they were pregnant. I have a whole library that I lend to people, not anybody, my people. When they're pregnant, but seldom do they want to read a whole book on a topic anymore. So yes, we need to teach children again to get their knowledge from the good source, from a source that has references and a bibliography at the end, and not just an article, a paragraph.
And I think this is what is so important for our dads. Then, that the dads who are involved, whether they're married to their partner, whether they're, living together, or whether it was a surprise baby, but they want to be involved. And this is those books, and those are the ways that the dads can get involved. A lot of the dads are completely overwhelmed and and almost feel removed from things. They're not going through the nausea. Their bodies aren't changing. They just have this partner, who is going through all of these hormonal, emotional, mental, physical changes. And often the men feel very helpless. And I think empowering the fathers by also giving them the power of knowledge, so that they can say, wow, look at this is why my wife is feeling so nauseous. All the hormones that are going through her body is almost fighting off this little parasite that's growing in her. And wow, I understand why she walks like a penguin. She is carrying this heavy little thing, and it's pushing down on her pelvis, and it's the pain's referring into her sciatica. And I think a lot of times when a woman has to go out of her family circle to look for support is when she doesn't have the support from her partner and from her family. And so by including these dads and empowering them with the knowledge, then they are better able to support their partners through this enormous life-changing experience. And it gives them an opportunity to be involved, that they're not just,
doesn't that take us back to
I planted the seed and
how we educate our children? Shouldn't we be teaching boys to be empathetic rather than sympathetic? We don't teach empathy. What do you think it's going to feel like in your body if you were carrying 13 kilos more? How do you think your body would cope if your bowel had to live in a pocket under your diaphragm? How would you feel about that kind of constipation? What about when your bones start to loosen and all your ligaments turn to chewing gum? And, in order to give your pelvis the capacity to expand and to open and to have that child drop down into it, can you imagine what it might feel like? And what if then your partner is saying, oh, your bum's getting a bit big. What about those thighs? What's happening with your body? You used to be gorgeous and now you're just flabby and fat. Do we consider how to be partners before we become parents? How to be the best human beings that we could be? Yeah, it's hard because, it doesn't necessarily mean that this young girl who decides to keep her baby has made a mistake. She might have made
No.
the best decision of her life. She might have had the best relationship because she is young and because she can relate to whoever this child is that has chosen her to be their mother at that particular time in her life. It might have been the best decision she ever made. And if we are supporting people to make these decisions and to inform them properly rather than with judgment, then we would make really great people rather than just good parents.
Okay, just on that, so young girls fall pregnant. We need to empower our girls as well to be able to speak to their parents. So you find out you're pregnant and you're scared to tell your parents. And that should be the last thing that you should worry about. You should be able to go straight to your parents and say, this is what's happened. I need support. And we need to encourage that more, I think. I think girls, I think in today's age, it's a lot better than 50 years ago, when you fell pregnant and then you had to marry the boy. But I think there's definitely more support now. But it should be that the first person you want to go and tell and be with and get support from are your parents. And there should be, as parents, there should be no judgment. There should be just support. But again, that's in an ideal world. And
But doesn't that come down to how we talk to our girls about menstruation? That if we are talking to them, if we're growing these children to celebrate menstruation and to understand what it means, and if we're having ceremonies around it, as ancient people used to, that we celebrate her becoming a woman, then we're talking about all the aspects that can lead to, as in that means that even though you are 13, you are 14, you are 15, and in days gone by you used to be 16 to start with, now because of all the estrogen that goes into food, you can be 6 or 7 when you're starting your periods. And so when we're looking at the aspect of what menstruation means and how the lining is being changed and how it means that a baby could come into your body, then we would talk then about what that might mean if you are supported when that happens, if you're not supported, who to come to, what it might mean if you make a baby, not a mistake, but if you make a baby without planning it, then what would you do in those circumstances? If we're having deep, meaningful conversations around the dinner table about difficult discussions, then our girls would be better prepared, wouldn't they? So surely it comes from the adult rather than the child's responsibility to go to the parent in an uncomfortable situation and explain what has happened. Surely if we were to raise the children properly, deeply, not properly, then we would be they would be more comfortable in the first place.
Yeah, Lisa, I think it's an excellent point that, in order for our children to be comfortable to come to us, we need to lay that foundation. If our children see us as, fire and brimstone, then, we are not going to be that first port of call when, they run into a difficult situation. And so that is, it's incumbent upon us to that our children know, like, that their parents are their safe space, and whatever happens, they can go to their parents.
I think we need to definitely
about judgment, doesn't it? If we're going to judge our children, they're going to judge us in return, aren't they?
exactly. I think the world's definitely changed, though. We definitely have come away from that. I know that the new generation, well, let's say the generation after my generation, anyway, my kids and that, are definitely more open. They chat more. They speak freely. I mean, we see it on the news every day, where even with the gay parade, they're free, they open, they there. I think we have a generation of, I want to say, like a stepping stone, that future generations are actually going to have it very easy. They're going to have it very easy and just be free and open and talk. And I think there's a lot more, just general, I want to say, not free speech. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but just this comfort in saying what you want, in this comfort in saying what you need. And it's exciting. It's exciting. And I see it with my children, and they're in their 20s now. And there is their friends and them, they speak about things. They're not scared to speak about periods and not scared to speak about, romance and things like that. I know in my generation, and I sound like I'm really old, but I'm not. I don't think I'm old. But I know growing up, it was a bit of a taboo subject still, and definitely my parents' generation, it just wasn't spoken about. That's it. So it's exciting that, that we are getting more and more men involved in those conversations about periods, about pregnancy, and they are there. And we see it with our birthing parents now. The men are involved completely, and it's exciting. It really is exciting to know that it is becoming more and more just you're together in this and you understand each other. So it's exciting. But girls, I love this conversation today. I feel as though we just went off on different angles, and it was lovely. And what are your thoughts from today's chat? Have you got any last minute bullet points that you want to add in?
Well, I think, as much as pregnancy is such a physical thing, it's so important for us to remember that emotional roller coaster, and to know that you do not have to go through it alone. That even though women have been falling pregnant and having babies for generations and generations, that it's not something that you have to just suck it up and do it because your mother did it and your grandmother did it. They I am very much in the mind of it takes a village to raise a baby, and and as Lisa said, you find your tribe, you find your village, and so that you go through the pregnancy with, even though it is nerve-wracking, it is, how are we going to support this baby financially, and will we be able to do this, and will we be able to afford that, and will I be a good mom, and will my partner be a good dad? And so to focus on getting as much of that emotional help as possible, so that we can cope with the physical trials and tribulations of being pregnant. And I think, as Lisa said, although we cannot really ever be prepared to have a baby, you never know how it's going to be. You never know how you're going to feel, how you're going to react. And each pregnancy is different. That to find that emotional support is going to, at least pave the way for you to better cope with your pregnancy and your, and bringing this baby into the world.
Any last thoughts, Sharon?
Well, I think what I have got from today's chat is responsibility. That if we're teaching our children to be responsible, then we want to teach them how to be responsible for their bodies, for their immune systems, for their health, for their choices, and then ultimately, of course, to live with their choices in the best way that they can, knowing that they have support from the family, no matter what those choices might be.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, another wonderful, energetic chat here. I love our talks. And we will go on to the second trimester next week. And thanks so much for joining me. Have a beautiful day.
Tally ho.
Ladies.
Bye, ladies. Bye.